This is William Robinson of Viral Hair, and we were speaking to
Guy Gilchrist.
yes, sir. And you are a cartoonist who worked on different properties, primarily working with the Muppets and with Nancy, right?
Those are two big ones, yeah.
And with your history of the Muppets and from the original Muppet Show, who do you think your favorite was?
Well, when I'm writing and drawing, and for folks that aren't aware, I started working for Jim. I auditioned in 1980, got the job being Jim's very first cartoonist. I was the syndicated cartoonist who wrote and drew the Muppets comic strip. There was a thing called newspapers where, okay, you guys don't know what that is, but what we used to do is like people used to take trees and cut them super, super thin. And then they would print news on them and then also the fun. And so I was part of the funnies. And they cut a lot of trees. 80 million people every single day read that comic. And that was 1981 to 1986. So, even though I've done a whole bunch of other stuff, I'll always be known, and I love to be known as Jim Henson's cartoonist. That was like my first, real big boom into the world professionally. And, and it certainly affected everything that I've done ever since. When you're writing and drawing characters every single day, you become all of them, Right. I remember I was sitting at a con with Steve Whitmire one day, and I guess over there the gal was saying, to Steve, so you're Kermit, and he's going, yes, and then she goes, well, you Fozzie, and goes, no, and well, you were Beaker, yes, well, but you were this one, and no. He said, why don't you just go over to see Guy? He was everybody, and that was very sweet of Steve. But that's kind of how it goes, is that when you're a cartoonist and you're writing and drawing, you're all of the characters. So having a favorite wouldn't be all that cool, except that I do. When I was a little boy, before I ever worked for Jim, Rolf the dog, was on the Jimmy Dean show, and he was the very first famous Muppet, and the first Muppet that had his own week, that was a weekly star on a show nationwide and all of that kind of thing. And so Rolf the dog, he'd be my favorite. We're kind of kindred spirits,
I understand. As a dad, mine became Fozzie because of dad jokes, basically. So, yeah.
There you go.
Now, kind of going back to Nancy, you worked on the comic strip for quite a while. How did that opportunity come about, and what interested you in the character?
Well, my literary agent in the mid 90s was David Hendon, a dear friend who I had first met at United Features. And United Features in New York had been my licensing agents, selling toys, books, merchandise, and all of that stuff for the Tiny Dinos series that I had created with Warner Brothers. David had deep connections to United and reached out to me in the mid 90s and said, that Jerry Scott was retiring from Nancy, and United Features would like to give me a go if I would audition first and draw some strips. So me being the brainiac that I am, I said, no, I don't want to do that. And David's going, are you insane? This is Nancy and Sluggo. I'm going, but David, I don't draw like that. And, I had already done, been in syndication, with the Muppet, and was, messing around with my own stuff and working in sports marketing and stuff at the time and doing children's books. So I kind of begged off. Then I sat there after a while, after I had hung up, and said, how do you draw those doggone characters anyway? I mean, I was thinking about Ernie Bushmiller and his art, and like how completely foreign that was to my style. And I went, and we used to have files that we called a morgue back in the day. You know, these big files that, you know, so it sort of looked like a morgue. And because back in the day there were no, you know, Google pictures, and you know, you had to have scrap on everything if you were whatever you were trying to draw. So I pulled out some scrap on Nancy and Sluggo, and I tried to draw and ink them, and I couldn't, and it got me upset because I was like, guy, you know, you're better than this. You know, I was on an ego trip, you know, going like, what do you mean you can't draw these characters? So for a week, without telling anybody, I worked on them. I lightboxed them from Ernie's stuff, Xeroxed it, you know, then did turnarounds and model sheets and the kind of stuff that I would do, trying to figure out how you put together a character. And then for about a week, I called David and I said, okay, I'll audition, because I had 6 strips in a Sunday. And he says, well, nice work, genius. They already found somebody. And he said, but would you please do me a favor and send me what you did, because I'd like to show it to them, just to let them know in case things didn't work out or whatever. And so I got him over to him, and he brought him into New York, and whoever that other person was, I never found out, and I'm sorry, you know, if I hurt your feelings, but I got the job. And but when I'll tell you what, when I got the job, I thought that it was maybe going to be 6 months to a year tops, because the strip had been declining in sales over the last 5 or 10 years or whatever. And, things happen. And so, having already been in comics with the Muppets, I kind of thought, gee whiz, well, this is kind of like jumping into a Shark Tank. I'm jumping into something that's been losing papers, and now it's going to change, authorship. And that's going to be another, hurdle. So we probably won't be around very long. But I did my best. And as it turned out, we did very well. And, and I wound up, we extended the contract another 2 years, another 3 years and everything. And anyway, eventually after around 22 and a half years, I finally said bye.
Well, I guess it worked out okay then.
Yeah, good gig. And just like everything else in my life, it's sort of like, God smiles down on me, and it's like I make these plans and idiotic decisions, and yet things keep working out. I turned down the Turtles too, Ninja Turtles. I turned that down when they first offered that to me, and then then I reversed my decision, and all these years later, I'm still drawing, those turtles coming out of the sewer. Pretty interesting.
Right. Speaking of the turtles and things along those lines, a lot of those characters lately, and I turned 51 this year, so grew up in the 80s, and
you're my people. Yay, you're my people.
Yes, sir, I am. And you see a lot of these things kind of coming back in one form or another, and it's kind of crazy to me. But why do you think that keeps happening? Why those trends keep coming back around?
Well, I think that the things of your childhood are always your favorite things. And I think your favorite music is always the music of your junior high and high school years. And I don't think that ever changes. And so, the good, the bad, and the indifferent of the decade, the era that you were in will always come bubbling back up, I think. I mean, like, I know that, like, in the 1970s, for instance, when I was in high school. You know, the 1950s, all of a sudden, and the birth of rock and roll had a resurgence, and there was American Graffiti and Happy Days, and you know, all the rock and roll reunions and all of that kind of stuff. And it seems to me that this past the past 7 or 8 years, it's sort of like the 80s are like that for your generation, where the 50s and
Right.
you know, and early 60s were like that for mine, you know. And the belovedness that I have for like the characters like, you know, I don't know, Woody Woodpecker and you know, Pogo and the, you know, and the music of that era, you know, the girl groups and Dion and all the pre-Beatles stuff and all of that is sort of the love that you have, you know, for the Turtles and the Muppet Babies and MTV and, you know.
Right.
Yeah. And it's nice to be a part of that, you know. It's certainly I look at it as just the coolest thing to be able to bring those things to you in whatever form that would be, you know.
Right.
It was really cool to be a part of all of that. You know, I was in New York City during a very, very, you know, rockin' time.
Right. Speaking of rocking, I know you're a musician as well.
Some would
What kind of
question.
got you? What got you into doing music?
I always was. I was, you know, from a very early age, I was really interested in art and in music and in making people happy and finding that and finding out how art was created. And anybody that could play a guitar, play the piano, and sing, I was always very interested in that. And I started, you know, picking at, you know, playing a guitar very, very early on. But I found paper and pencil first. But it was really the concept of, wow, isn't this neat that you can take nothing, thin air, and you can create something that makes people happy? And honestly,
Right.
I know that sounds super corny, but people that know me know that I am super corny and that I really truly mean this. That's the thing that rocks me. That's the thing that is like so cool. And so I learned 3 chords, and then look out, you know, you've got 1,000 songs. And I'm still, you know, paying Mel Bay, you know, the extra 75 cents for that 4th chord. But but pretty soon I'm going to have that. Look out, world. But yeah, I started writing songs, and I had a couple of songs that got sold in the late 70s and early 80s. And that sort of whetted my, you know, appetite for the business. And on and off, while I was, you know, writing and drawing books and cartoons and all of that stuff, you know, I had a band, and I would always write songs. The same love that I have for writing children's books and writing comic strips and creating story arcs for television shows and all that sort of thing is the exact same energy that's in writing a song. You know, you're telling a story, or you have a feeling, you know, that you're trying to
Right.
get at. And it's just the coolest thing. And so to me, they're the same. And you know what's really interesting is that many artists are really good musicians or are into music, and many famous musicians draw and paint and are cartoonists, you know. And I think it's a part of it's a part of who we are, you know. It's a part of our soul. It's just different colors, you know.
Right. I can see the connection. And looking at that, has any of your cartoon work bled over into music or vice versa?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, my love for music was very in Nancy. I, you know, Sluggo, a beat up guitar, and made him, you know, a pretty terrible songwriter. You know, kind of about on par with me. And I would and a lot of singer-songwriters and stuff like that, and the Nancy comic strip in the backgrounds and that sort of thing. And I've been living in Nashville now for almost 15 years. And so the last sort of 10 years or so of Nancy was very sort of Nashville based, because that's where
Right.
I was. You kind of write what you know. But also in my music, I have some videos, like there's a song called Jim Beam Me Up, Scotty. That's all animated, that people can find on my website and then on YouTube and all of that too. And there have been, and we've done, music videos for Heart of the Night, where I've been drawing, a character in the song during the video, and then you see the artwork at the end. That's been, a major thing with me is, and one of my favorite things that you can find if you want, Jamie O'Neill, the great singer Jamie O'Neill, about 10 years ago, maybe, she did a song called Take Me Home. And I had a whole bunch of artwork that I had drawn just in Big Pen of shelter puppies and stuff like that I was doing for an animal rescue. And we wound up making like a little, the video for the song became just, sort of a slideshow of those pieces. The song's called Take Me Home, and it's about rescue animals. And it's Jamie O'Neill. You can find that online too. So there's been a lot. In 2017, I really had you can't say a dream come true, because you don't dream stuff like this. It happens and it blows your mind. I wound up being the animator, the storyboard person, and we created 13 sing-along videos for Dolly Parton for her I Believe in You children's record. And I did, oh my gosh, I did that with Greg Cravens and Tom Brenner and our team. I had the most amazing team. We only had 7 weeks to do 13 videos. And those are everywhere, and those have millions of views and stuff. So if you've ever seen Little Dolly in her little trolley and stuff, and those songs from her album a few years back came out around this time, about Christmas time of 17. That's me.
Very awesome. Now, are there any current or future projects you can talk about that we should be looking out for?
Yeah. Well, last year, I did my very first animated book. That was really interesting. Did this animated Apple book, and it's called Monster Dance. The celebrated actor Dennis O'Hare, we all know Dennis, and I hadn't met him or anything, but I was a huge fan. He did the English language version, and then we have a Mandarin version, a French version of this book, and you can find it's called Monster Dance. It's very Muppety monster, and the story is all animated, and it's on Apple Books and Amazon and all of that kind of stuff. And we did it to comfort children during COVID. The monster dance is COVID, and this dog and this little girl take control of the situation among a lot of scared adults. And that was really fun. I also, there's a Mud Pie comic book that I did, Secret Agent 00 Cool, that a lot of people really like. There were only like a couple thousand of them made, and this was many years ago, like 20 years ago or something. But we put out an anniversary edition of that. It was called 40 Years of Mud Pie, and you can find that at my website online. And there's a brand new book. I just did a brand new book, and hopefully, if the supply chain, all that stuff, gets over to Amazon and everything, hopefully the books aren't sitting in some boat from China. Who knows? But anyway, I did a really, really fun book called Magical Creatures Make Bad Pets. And I think You guys are, if you're a fan of my my sort of fantasy goofball art, where I draw dragons and stuff,
Right.
then you're really like this. I spent a long, loving time with my brushes and threw the clock out the window, and spent a long time on the book. And it's really cute. It's about a little prince who's a little bit sort of stuck up and spoiled, and he keeps asking his dad for anything other than a conventional house pet.
Right.
With hilarious and zany madcap results, called "Magical Creatures Make Bad Pets," and I hope you check that out. And then, yeah, isn't this crazy? I get to stay so busy, you know. Yeah, I go on the road a lot, and and get to meet people and stuff, and draw all the characters and keep them fresh for myself and for you guys. But then there's all this brand new stuff. I'm doing this is sort of a stay tuned, and I can't tell you a lot about it right now.
Right.
But anyway, there's a rock and roll 1960s, like, I don't know if there's a word beyond legend, then that would be what she is. And I'm doing a graphic novel about her life in the 60s. And
oh, wow.
So excited. And it takes my love of that era of rock and roll, like when I was like 7 or 8. And then it brings, and I'm editing it, she's writing it, I'm doing all of the art, the whole thing together. And oh my God, I mean, every day that I'm on this thing, I'm drawing like the dreams of my youth. It's lovely. And it's art unlike anything I've ever done before. I'm pushing myself in a different direction, which is always really neat. I hope it's like, when you get scared and you're going like, hey, I know, hope you screw up, because like you never did it before, and you're like, trying. It's like, I don't know, I'll be 65 in January, and I'll never retire. I never, can imagine doing that. I mean, I have a right arm, so we're all good. Whether the brain functions or not, who cares? This works, right? All the characters are in here. But like, so many people my age, are like, retiring, or, they're going off and fishing and stuff like that. And that's all really cool. And I love doing that stuff. But what I truly love the most is learning new things, right, and trying to get better than yesterday. So it's neat.
It's very neat. And I'm beginning to learn that myself.
Yeah, you figure it out, don't you?
Yeah, it's amazing. The older you get, the more you figure out, then you realize how dumb you were 5 years ago.
Yeah. And then there's the other things that go through life, you go through your life. Well, but don't you realize like so it's interesting, right? How you have this roller coaster of emotions and stuff where you're kind of thinking, yeah, I told you, I don't know, what's next? Is there going to be something better tomorrow? And then stuff happens, and you're going like, wow, that was pretty cool. And you make all of these stuff, and then eventually someone looks at you like you're smart. Like, I call it idiot's wisdom. I think that the more mistakes you make, and if you stay alive, and at this point, when they say he's legendary, he's enshrined in the Smithsonian, people tend to think that I'm in formaldehyde, but I'm not. So when they actually see that I'm like actually moving and not, like a robot or something, they like start asking me questions like I'm smart or something. So I give them idiot's wisdom. What would you like to know? I messed everything up. I can probably help.
Yeah, I've had that talk with my kids. So I dig it. Okay, Mr. Chris. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
More about this talk with your kids, but anyway. Maybe you could talk to my granddaughter. She won't listen to me.
Well,
You've been a
I,
blessing. Thank you so much for putting up with me.
it's been a delight to talk to you, sir. I really enjoyed the conversation. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.